Hello, everybody. Hope all of you are doing well. And finally, the weather is clearing up here, at least in the Bay Area it is. Although it is sunny, it is quite windy. So hopefully, all of you are still staying safe from those falling trees. And I hope that I don't have to deal with any more of those. Fortunately, the one in front of my house was pretty far away from my car. So hopefully, won't have to deal with that too much longer, and we can enjoy some really good weather, and we can enjoy the modifications that we hope to do to our cars and enjoy them throughout the summer. But today I would like to talk a little bit about and get your opinions on the brand new M2. Of course, there is going to be a big controversy in terms of the design with it, and this was to be expected, right? Because the G chassis moving over from the F, there was a dramatic difference. With the E series, throughout the entire progression, even into the F generation, you can see there being some sort of, I guess you could say, improvements, subtle improvements along the way. So like subtle refinements, but it was still very much BMW. Yes, it looked a little, you could say, boxy from like the E36, and then moving towards the E46, E90, you could say it got a little bit bubbly. Then you move into the F chassis, and they really, for a lack of a better phrase, kind of sanded down the edges and gave it a little bit more curvature. So gave it the defining lines of the boxiness from the early 90s to the, I guess, aerodynamic kind of look and fast looking nature of the later 2000s. I think the F chassis really embodied both kind of lines from the E chassis, or all of them, I should say. But here, when we're going into the G chassis, I feel like there's quite a bit of loss of identity on BMW side. I feel like they've taken away from the original design, and it looks like they're really trying to encompass things from other companies. And so I'm not sure if maybe the design team is from, as we'll get into it in just a second, is maybe they're coming from like Mercedes. The other one is Hyundai, as well as Lexus. So we can just go ahead and take a look now. And here is the brand new G87. And I picked this photo specifically because when we look at another photo that we have up here, it's oddly similar as far as like the, what the car is doing at this moment in time and the color. So it feels like it's a lot boxier. They've taken out the edges of it, you could say. I'm not the biggest fan of like the squared off design. If you look at everything from the bottom of the bumper to even the grills, they have more of a boxy shape to it. Even the eyelids are boxier. Versus when you look at the F87, you can see that it has clear defining lines, kind of like a diamond shape to it on the grills here at the bottom. And then it's, it just has an edge to it. Same thing with the eyelids and then the grills as well. Sure, you could say that, the the G87 M2, I think they have a design that increases the airflow, but, it's not doing too much. You could find ways to increase airflow here. I don't think that it's that impactful. And you just see it just has a flatter design overall. The defining lines on the F87, it really carries from depending on which way you're going to look at it, either from the trunk all the way down to the fender, your eyes just kind of fall that way. Or if you're looking at it from the front, it picks up from the wheel well and trails all the way to the back. Here, it does come from the trunk, and then it just kind of falls flat around here. You could say that it extends a little bit in the reflection here, but, you know, it doesn't really trail as well as, you know, like the F87. It doesn't, the lines aren't as defined, you could say. And here's a little bit of a comparison of the front of the car, where you really get to see the design differences versus, you know, you have the G87 on the left and the F87 on the right. And it even looks like it's a little higher. Of course, this probably isn't up to scale. So just take that into consideration when you're looking at this picture, is that, you know, the height of it might not be exactly what it is in this picture. But when you're really looking at it, you can see that it gets very, very boxy. So if you're into that, then, you know, you'll like this new redesign. And with the headlights, I've mentioned this before, I feel like this is more of an Audi type design, these kind of under-swooped headlight type of things. I really feel like the angel eyes, whether it has the edges or they're more of a circular shape, is really more in line with the BMW heritage. This, not so much. So I feel like they're drawing inspiration from other companies, when if somebody wanted an Audi, they would go get an Audi. If they wanted a Lexus, they would go get a Lexus. If they wanted a Hyundai, they would go get a Hyundai. And so I feel like it, and, you know, it is what it is. However, I feel like it's really taking away from the identifying characteristics of a BMW. Even if you look at the mirrors over here, you know, they don't have that kind of teardrop shape that just kind of flow with the car. It's just, it's a square. And then moving on to the back, I would say here there's not much of a difference. Yes, you could say there's a bit of a difference in the design of the taillights and all those things, but here the design isn't too different. I was never really big a fan on either one of these chassis on how much the muffler is exposed. I wish it was a little bit more recessed and not too slung low. But with the G chassis, it's just maybe because of the cutout, or because maybe it rides higher, it seems to be exposed a whole lot more. And if we're talking about defining features, I would say that the defining features in the rear, just this section of the car, is definitely more on than it is on the F chassis, which I guess I'm a little bit indifferent about it. To me, it doesn't matter all that much. However, I feel like it's a little bit excessive here on the where the reflector light is and how it kind of peels into that. I feel like the rear of the car, if you're looking at it front to back, should kind of fall off easily, evenly. But this, it just hangs you up a little bit. But again, it's an aesthetic taste, and it's not too far off from the previous generation. Now, the interior, I will admit, is quite nice. It is a nice update to what the F chassis had, and it's nice to see that BMW finally put in an oil temp sensor on their 2 Series that actually is not just like a meter of like hot and cold. So that's a nice addition. I do feel like the infotainment is a bit much for this car. I do understand, like, this is kind of what we already have. We have, you know, our speedometer and everything over here, and then we have our infotainment system over here. I would kind of prefer it to be separated, just because if one of them goes bad, you don't have to replace the other one. But now it's one whole thing. But at least, you know, they don't have like the different things of like the 6-inch screen versus the 10-inch screen or 8-inch screen. And it's also nice that they have the manual transmission here as well. I will say that on the manual transmission, I do think it's a bit excessive to have like a gear indicator here. Like if you're in neutral, you know you're in neutral. If you're, you know, if you've been driving manual enough, you know what gear you're in, that you don't need this thing here. So this is taking up what I feel is valuable real estate. And I've gotten a sense that BMW, through like their LCI upgrades for the F chassis, kind of have gone to this Tron type vibe where they're doing like these bars and gradients versus the traditional like speedometer where it's a meter and it goes like that. I guess it's really just a taste thing. For me, I'm not a big fan. I want my old school gauges. I don't need all this fancy stuff over here. I do suppose that this is nice, that the clutter here is definitely down, and you have your like your temperature and all that stuff over here, and pretty much the only thing down here like your heated seats, and if you just want to turn the AC on, and the emergency lights. So bare bones essentials down here, which is nice. It cuts down on the clutter, and nobody's using a CD player anymore anyways. So this is, to me, this is okay. I would say that if they cut down on the real estate here, the only thing that I do wish, and this is a personal thing, of course, like if the motor's strong, it doesn't really matter, but I would like the vents to be a little bit bigger just to pass a little bit more airflow. That's just like a small pet peeve thing. That's nothing major though. The one thing that I feel that BMW didn't really need to do was, if you look at the door card over here, these 3 M stripes, they actually light up. I feel that like that's such a gimmicky thing. And, you know, it's, I think ever since, I forgot what brand it is, but the car that has the, like the star lights in the fabric up top, I forgot what it's called right now. But I feel like a lot of cars are trying to imitate that. And like, that's cool if you're riding in the back seat all the time, or if you're the passenger, but if you're the driver, you're not really looking at that stuff. You don't really care about that stuff. And to me, this is just a distraction. In all honesty, the M2 is really supposed to be a driver's car. It's supposed to be a bare bones. Like, I don't need all the fancy stuff. Just put it in manual, take away all the assistance, and let me drive the car. That's what the M2 is supposed to be. It's supposed to be the entry-level BMW, or the enthusiast BMW, that's supposed to really resonate with people that fell in love with the E36, E46, the smaller chassis BMWs. And doing things like this is, to me, is just really gimmicky. Yes, I could get away with these screens. It's not that big of a deal. And then the steering wheel, not that big of a fan of. I do prefer the previous style steering wheel, but again, very nitpicky. One thing that I do like, actually, is that the start-stop button is near the shifter versus being up behind the steering wheel. It's just a little bit more convenient. But I guess if you're shifting through gears, it could be annoying that it's there. I don't know. It just really depends on how you position your hand when you're doing your drive. But it's nice. It's like you start the car, you put it in gear, you're right there. And you have 2 options for seats. You know, you have these seats, which people have said are very, very comfortable. And I don't doubt that. The BMW Sport seats, I would say, all the way even from the E46, E36, are very comfortable. You know, for that time that they were on the car, meaning that, you know, despite all the competition, their seats have always been relatively comfortable. I would say like the only seats that I found truly, truly uncomfortable, and it's not even that they're uncomfortable, but that it's just, they don't support you well while you're driving are going to be the base seats in like the F30s and the F22s, the ones that have the flat bottom seat versus the sport seats that kind of hug you. So these do have those, and I feel like they'll do the job, and they're good for people who want a comfier seat. However, if you want the sport seat, they do offer that as well. And I would say like this is going to be an even like more of an upright driver position seat than the current like M2 CS seats or the M4 CS seats even. So especially with like the divider here in the middle, I don't know, what that whole thing is about, but it's like this is going to be very uncomfortable if you get in and out of the car all the time, just because you're going to have to dig yourself out of this little ditch every single time. So that's something to consider when you're going up to the carbon fiber package as well. The one thing that I don't like is, I think if you do spec it out to this extent, is the rear of the car. And although we already did look at it, I think when you upgrade to the M Performance package, you get this type of exhaust, which to me is very Lexus, Toyota, Honda-esque. Like I think that Lexus LFAs have this, the Civic Type R has something similar to this, I believe. And to me, this is really, really getting away from, the traditional BMW heritage. And you could say that I'm old and whatnot. However, if you wanted to make a new design that's yours, great. But this is, to me, is like deliberate plagiarism. You did not come up with this design. This has not been a BMW thing before. And it's just straight carbon copy from those other cars that I mentioned. I am not a fan of this. Like, if I were to have these seats, I would want this exhaust. Like, this exhaust is fine. If you get an aftermarket exhaust, you can spec it out, whatever. And then that will get rid of the bump down here. And that looks perfectly fine. Like, that's a perfectly good looking exhaust setup and rear diffuser. This, I don't know what they're thinking with this. And then, of course, the other thing too is, I think you have to upgrade to forged wheels because they come cast now. And to me, I mean, I guess if they're really going to save it for like a CS, like, that's fine. It's just really annoying that BMW's doing this again. They hindered the M2 the first go around with the F chassis. First, they put in an N55 engine. Yes, of course, it's the strongest N55 engine. However, it's not an M engine. And then when they finally put in an M engine, they detuned it. And then they detuned it again. And then finally, the last iteration, the CS, they finally gave it the true M engine. And here, they do even have, we're going to skip this really quick, they do have the full M engine in there. They just detuned it. And it's something along the lines of like, oh, well, it would detract people from the M4. Well, then let it be what it is. Like, get rid of the gimmicky stuff like the lighting on the doors. Maybe they don't need a fancy infotainment system. Maybe they don't need like all the fancy stuff of like rev matching and all that stuff. Like, you could take that stuff out and put that into the M4. But you have the hardware in there and you toned it down with software, which does not make sense. Like, it's already there. You've already had this engine running at a good capacity with these other cars and you detuned it now. It's not like this engine came out first and then the M3 and M4 came out with a better engine. If that's what they wanted to do, like, that would be the best route to go. Produce the 2 Series first with the detune engine, and then when you release the 3 and the 4s, people are like, okay, yeah, whatever. Like, maybe they wanted to do some testing, ensure that it's safe, and now they just bumped it up a little bit. Sure, it's only about 20 horsepower, 20 torque, but still, it's quite annoying. They've already done this before. And this is, to me, is just BMW not listening to their customer base. And I think it's because a lot of these people, you can just tell by the design, are not people who've been with BMW for a while, or they just frankly don't care. They keep doing things like putting plastic parts like the Mickey Mouse flange in there, the turbo inlet pipe. Like a lot of these components you can just see right here are plastic. And yes, from a business perspective, I do completely understand that it's cheaper to produce plastic and you want your customers to come back to service the cars. And yes, BMW does have their own plastic manufacturing plant as well as a carbon fiber plant. That's why typically you see aftermarket designs or whatever, or carbon fiber parts, you can see pretty much an exact replica on something like AliExpress, where BMW, you're not going to see that. You know, those parts are made in-house in their warehouse and it's only designed for BMW. So that does annoy me quite a bit that they did decide to go that route. But finishing up with the interior, you know, they're saying that they have, you know, their curved display and it's 12.3 inch information display and a 15-inch control display. You know, that's nice. Manual gearbox, that's what it should be. 3 different seat options. Also, there is another seat option. The nice thing here is some people, I guess, were complaining with the F chassis. There's always ways to go around it with a tune or a code. But they were saying that they didn't like that if you turned off the rev match, you also turned off the traction control. To me, if you're going to turn off the rev match, you're turning off you're turning off traction control. I don't really know that many people who are going to turn off the rev match who won't also turn off the traction control. For instance, for me, I turn off traction control because on my way home, there's a pretty big roundabout on the freeway and it hangs. And the nice thing about having something like your suspension fully done is that you can hang in that turn and you can really ride the inside, or if you want to, you could ride the outside really, really hard. The traction control will turn on and your fun is done. Like it'll, you know, cut power to the wheels and, you know, you're just trotting along. So for the most part, it's nice that they actually did separate the two. But for the most part, I don't, you know, maybe you guys can let me know in the chat, but I don't know anybody who's going to turn off the rev match that isn't already going to turn off the traction control. So, you know, it's nice that you have the 2 M buttons that, you know, will do everything for you in the settings that you can, whatever you want it to set. But if they didn't have those M buttons there, it would be annoying because you would have to do 2 things versus 1 because they're not integrated anymore. You know, they have the nice leather and all that stuff. Like that's cool. Again, not a fan of this interior door light up thing. It's really gimmicky. Not that big of a fan. I hope that they come out with a matte carbon finish, just because for me personally, this is really easy to reflect sunlight and it gets really annoying. So I just prefer matte carbon or matte finish, whatever it is, just for the drivability of it. And here we go for more of the stuff. It talks about the M buttons, the M drive, I guess not called iDrive anymore. The other thing that I heard about this screen here is that the options are not very organized. It's very scattered. It's hard to like dig through the inner settings. I even feel that it was like this way from iDrive. I believe it's iDrive 4 or 5 to 6. I feel that the one where you have like the words written out like multimedia, phone, where it's written out in text and then you can go through the scroll wheel is easier to go through versus the one with the panels. And it's like you go through the panels and you have to like click through so many things before you get to the thing that you want. you know, the iDrive 4 or 5, it's like that too. Like you can't just hit the media thing and it goes to, you know, if you're playing on your phone or the radio, it won't go right to that. It'll go to the source, and then you have to select the source, and then you're at your thing. So it is a little bit annoying, but yeah, if this is anything like the trajectory of the iDrive 4, 5 to 6, and this gets even more convoluted, like it looks cool for marketing purposes. However, in a practical use, it is annoying. So, you know, and then talking about the engine, of course, it's going to be more powerful and all the things that you expect with, you know, a newer car. However, power is not everything. It's only a portion of what makes a car. And the M2 or the 2 Series in general is not meant or designed or thought of as a major horsepower torque car. It's meant to be or thought of as a really good handling car. And I think what BMW did and it might be a little bit harder to see, but when they took the design, they actually lengthened the wheelbase and widened it out. Widening it out, I can definitely see. A lot of people, including myself, are kind of complaining like you have very little working space in the wheel wells, and it's hard to fit a wider wheel setup in the 2 Series. There was no reason that I believe that they needed to widen the wheelbase. And sure, the people are going to say, oh, well, it reduces the feeling of like the NVH, like it reduces the bumps and all of the things on the road. If you're getting an M2 and you want it to perform like an M2, you really don't care about that, or you're just going to put up with it. If you want a wider wheelbase, if you want a comfier car, you're going to go for a 3 or a 5 Series. If you want a 2-door, you're going to go for a 4 Series. So I feel like they are not addressing the concerns of the audience base for this car. If people are complaining about this car, you already have a solution to those complaints in the bigger chassis. You don't need to make this any bigger. It feels like you're taking 1 step forward and 2 step back, because you made the 2 Series car smaller because people were complaining that the 3 Series was getting too big. And now you're making the 2 Series big. It's like, come on. Like, didn't you learn from your lesson already? Or you just have a completely new team in there that's like, oh, like, let's not study history. You know, let's make this car bigger because it's like you have a car for that. And yet, here we go. So, yeah, that's just my opinions on it. You know, if you like it, you like it. There's nothing wrong with it. But yeah, the styling, exterior wise, not too big of a fan. The interior, I feel like, is a little bit overdone. It should be a little bit more bare bones. The rear's not that big of a deal until you go to the M Performance exhaust, which is copyright infringement, basically. So with that, you know, if you guys wanted to, we could go through these articles together if you guys want, and that kind of highlight the differences between the two. I pulled up 2 that are pretty prominent. But first, let's go ahead and answer the chat. On here. How's it going? All good over here. The weather's clearing up. It's just a little windy. A little bit of a scare today at the gym, though. I think somebody or a few people ran in and like had bolt cutters. They cut all the things, all the locks in the locker room, and took a bunch of stuff. So as soon as that happened, I was like, all right, let me finish up my couple of sets here and I will get to my car, because if they're breaking into things over here, maybe they will be breaking into things in the parking lot, which I don't want. The N55 water pump, what is it that you want to know? As far as I know, you know, the electric water pump, like, it's fine. It holds up. There's not like a modification that you can do for like a better propeller like you can with the older ones, with going from a plastic to a metal one. But they hold up fine. And that, like, the nice thing is that you can purge the system without having to do it manually. It'll do it itself if you hook it up to a battery charger. Mine is still going strong. It's about 70,000 miles already. Russian Bear. I think the G87 is horrible. The combination of rounded edges and squared inlets is so jarring. I hate that you have to overlook the design for the performance. Yeah. I mean, if I really had the money to pick up a G87 M2, I would just pick up an M2 CS. I would just save my money and hunt for an M2 CS for a while before I would pick this up. Not only that is the M2 CS, like, that's the cream of the crop for the F chassis. And then until this generation runs its course, I would really want to see what unfolds for this chassis. F87 is best, agreed. I like it. I like the design of it the best. The CS, it's really, again, it's BMW doing BMW things, but I really dislike how they took out the comfort access on that car. To install it, it doesn't add that much more weight, and it really is a convenience factor. It's like, you already have the technology, why don't you put it in? Streamline. I don't like the square inlets. It looks like a Lego car. Yeah, I think somebody said that they're trying to make it look like a, let me see. They said that it was trying to make it look like a Porsche. I forget which one though. Here we go. They said that they're trying to make it look like the Porsche. And so this is where I feel like they are really trying to take things that worked on other cars, like bits and pieces that worked on other cars, without doing all of the other things. Like, you can't take this front, like these inlets or this type of grille here, and then install it onto a BMW and then think that it's going to look just fine. Just as much as you can't take your old bumper design and slap on a Lexus exhaust and think it's going to look fine. You're really not incorporating the design as a whole. You're just taking like body parts that you think are going to look good. It's like if it's almost like a mad scientist, almost like you're taking, you know, a bodybuilder's arms, and then, you know, you're taking let's say like the legs of Usain Bolt. Like, it's like, it doesn't work that way. So I have no idea what BMW is truly doing. I think that they are really, their design team is not in sync. They're pulling people from other companies, and they are not really paying attention to their customer base. Like, that's the most obvious thing. I can't defend how they haven't upgraded that coolant Mickey Mouse flange to a metal one after so many iterations. It's bewildering. The plastic charge pipes, it's the same thing. Like, if you want to put certain plastic parts in the interior, fine, but you're going to put it in the engine to cut costs. You're going to copy the design of other manufacturers that have done well because you're kind of lazy to come up with your own design. I would say that I guess I might be sounding a lot like some people who are saying that, you know, like, for, you know, I've started doing some stuff on tools, but a lot of people will say that Harbor Freight copies the designs of other tool manufacturers like Knipex. And I think some of that definitely applies here. Let's see here. Streamlined. The dual circular headlight of the F87 is a nod to BMW history. The new headlight is generic. Yep. Say that again. Hate those exhausts. Yeah, I mean, if you're a Lexus person or a Toyota person, you probably love it. Honda, same thing, because that was your design. That was like what you came up with. That is your signature thing. It's not a BMW thing. Shane, what else should I get for my M235i? I already got downpipes, intake, intercooler, charge pipe, inlet pipe, and upgraded coils and spark plugs. I guess all that you really need is a tune to put it all together, or an exhaust. You could work on suspension. That's always my go-to. I prefer doing suspension before I do any type of power modifications. You know, a lot of the stuff you're doing for reliability sakes, you know, your intakes, your intercooler, a lot of that charge pipe, all that stuff is like plastic stuff. So now that your car is kind of solid mechanically, I would say go for the suspension. I mean, that's what the 2 Series is meant for. If you wanted to start like on a budget wise and kind of future proof yourself, you start with the front control arms. But if you have the disposable income, coilovers, streamlined. Yeah, I like the seats too. I do like the seats. I'm not sure how I feel about the little hump in the middle. You know, I can position my legs just fine. I don't need any assistance there. But they do look nice. They're more refined from the typical seats that we have on the F chassis. The squared intakes look like the GT2 RS, but much worse. Okay, let me look at that one. Oh, okay, it's more evident here. Yes, for sure it is. Okay. Okay, Eduardo, let's take a look. Good call. So here we can definitely see, like, it works on this car. You know, for whatever reason, maybe it's the proportions. Maybe it offsets the circular headlights. Maybe it has something to do with the scoops over here, the body of the car. But it works. It's like I said, is they're taking this section, they're taking this bumper, and they're putting it on this car. So look at that bumper, as opposed to that one. Square, 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 versus here, square, square, square. Here we had nice defined lines, and then they just slapped that on there, and they did some little dinky stuff with the headlights. I don't know what's up with that. Personally, I like bigger headlights. To me, it's like you have more of a viewing capacity when it comes to that, but maybe that's just me. So Eduardo, good call on that one. Let's see, Russian Bear 79. For 40,000, would you personally go for a F82 or N55 M2? I prefer the smaller size, but the S55 is tempting. I would say if 40,000 is all that you have, go for the N55. If you still have some money in your back pocket, you could go for the F87, just because that N55 is really reliable. The amount of forged internals in there is more than any other N55, and the N55 is already a pretty reliable engine. You don't have to do weird things like the walnut blasting. I've actually seen a car in the shop, at the shop I go to at SU Bimmer. They pulled off the intake manifold. I think a car had like, I think it was like 110,000 miles. And the intake valves on those work pretty darn clean. The mechanic that I was talking to, I asked him, I said, if this was your car, would you do this? And he was like, no, not unless I was already doing something that pulled it off. Like I was doing he was like, if I was at the shop and I was doing it myself and I was doing something like the oil filter housing gasket where I already have to back off the intake manifold and potentially change the gaskets, if I'm already there, sure. But I'm not going to set time aside in my day to actually do this. The S55, you're just going to, pay attention to a little bit more. everything on that car is just going to cost a little bit more. So if 40,000 is what you're willing to spend on a car and you still have money in your back pocket, you know, M car is the way to go. However, if money is a bit of a concern, you go with the N55 just because it's going to be more reliable. Parts on it are not going to cost as much, and you can piggyback off of a lot of other things from other cars. Like the charge pipes are going to be cheaper on that car because it's serviced the base model F30s and the F22s. MST turbo inlet pipe, intakes, all of the things. You know, you only have one set of intake filters and housings to worry about versus two on the S55. So overall upkeep is going to be cheaper on that N55. So let's see. We still have a couple people here. You know, feel free to keep dropping questions, but I haven't taken like the deepest of dives into it. So if you guys want, let's hang out for a little bit and we'll take a look at this comparison of the F87 and the G87. So here they're saying you could probably have kept the first generation F87 BMW M2 on the market for another 2 or so years. Yes. And fans wouldn't have complained, but it's gone now. And in its place is the new G87 M2, replacing what is one of the most loved individual M cars with something new must have been an intimidating undertaking for BMW. Honestly, I feel like it's kind of like a money grab and they were kind of lazy in the design. And that's probably why it retained key ingredients like a manual gearbox, rear-wheel drive, and 6-cylinder engine. I mean, BMW's, I don't know who's writing this, but BMW's bread and butter is the 6-cylinder engine. I don't know. Like, I don't think that they would go, like, the V8 is reserved for, like, the bigger cars. Like, you go 2, 3, 4, even 5. 5 is kind of like where you feather the line between straight 6 and V8. But yeah, but there have been many changes, not all of them for the better. And that's why we've come here to find out, is the new G87 actually a better car than the one it replaces? Like by numbers, yes. Overall, no. And I think also too, it's like, okay, styling, we talked about styling already. I think, okay, so this is showing a carbon roof. So that's nice that they retain that. I think it picked up over 200. Okay, here we go. Here's the weight. Over 200 pounds more than the previous M2. Why? Why is this a thing? And 200 pounds isn't much. Like they're saying, oh, it has adaptive dampers. They had EDC on the old M2. This 200 pounds comes from an extended drive shaft, extending the body of the car. Like this 200 pounds, it's all in the length of the car. Even if you wanted to widen it out, like widening it out wouldn't be too big of a deal because of things like the electronic steering rack. And if you have rear wheel drive, of course, it's going to weigh less as well. However, adding that extra length is where this 200 pounds came from. Is what I think it's that, and it's them not going to forged wheels. They had forged wheels on the OG M2 even versus these cast wheels. And that's easily, I mean, forged wheels, if we're talking, if this thing comes with 19s out of the gate, and we'll look into that in a second, but if this thing comes up with 19s out of the gate, that's easily like 30 pounds right there, 40 pounds depending on the forging process and versus the cast process. So 150 pounds it was completely avoidable. Just keep the length of the car. If you wanted to extend it width-wise and pick up like maybe 50, 100 is really pushing it, is fine. 200, it's ridiculous. And you're 16 pounds within the M4. Should not be a thing. Yeah. Oh my goodness. And it weighs more than the M3 and M4 when similarly equipped. It's completely ridiculous. I have no idea why. So here you can actually see the side by side where it actually does have a shorter wheelbase. And to me, I don't know. Like I said, maybe I'm old. I'm just not a fan. Yes, we've also known that this has been a thing, that the automatics have been getting quicker and quicker and that the manual is slower. But in all honesty, I feel like so few of us are actually going to have this as a dedicated track car out of the gate. This car is designed to be a manual, but it's nice to have both options. I mean, if BMW was going to borrow ideas from Porsche, why not borrow that 7-speed manual transmission? Like, if you're going to borrow something for this car, let it be a driver focused thing. Like, forget those intakes that we're talking. Forget this looking thing over here. You know, compared to what we were talking about earlier. You know, forget this bumper, which looks very similar to this. Get that 7-speed manual transmission that Porsche has. That's what we want. Let me know if you agree with that one in the chat. But if they were going to steal something, you know, forget that Lexus exhaust that they got. Can we get the 7-speed manual transmission? That'd be nice. Under the hood, okay, yes, you know, they have the S58 versus the S55. Of course, it's going to be better. It's a newer engine. We'll see how the reliability of that holds up over time. The S55 is kind of like a N55 on steroids, if you will. And so it's just building on that reliability. I think what BMW did really good was they built, this is the part I will say that they did really, really good. They took the N54 and took all the complaints of, like, you know, the intake valves getting all the carbon deposits, so it needs a catch can or it needs a better purge system, as well as its reliability because of the, you know, the bigger turbo versus the twin scroll and all the things. And they made it really reliable in the N55. However, the potential for power was really lost, and they improved on both aspects of reliability, I feel, as well as power, or they sacrificed very minimal reliability for the increase in power in the S55. That, I think, was a very good thing. And the B58 is pretty reliable too. However, this is where BMW dropped the ball again, is it's the weak point of the B58 is its cooling components, not its cooling efficiency, but its cooling components, a lot of which are plastic. So, like, if you guys decide to get a B58, replace like the plastic flanges for metal ones, change out the plastic hoses for silicone ones if you can. The B58's kryptonite is its cooling system components. I've talked to a lot of shops about it, and they all say the same thing. It's the cooling components that fail on the B58. But if you do everything else, it's even more reliable than the N55. Let's see what else we have here. Once again, rear-wheel drive, 6-speed manual transmission gearbox. Yes. Rev matching is still let me know if you guys are a fan of the rev match thing? Like, I mean, it's cool, I guess. And if you're learning manual, like, that's fine. But I mean, you can rev match on your own, and not every situation you're going to want to rev match either. For instance, like for me, when I'm like within a block or two of my work, or I'm a block or two at home, I don't want to rev match. I don't want to draw that type of attention to myself. Or if I'm coming home late, it is, to me, it's rude to, the people that you live with or in the neighborhood. So you just, want to chill out type of thing. So it is nice that you can turn it off. the 8-speed manual or automatic. So in the past BMW's 8-speeder has been praised in the past for almost matching the fast shifts of a dual clutch, but we suspect that a modicum of excitement may be lost between the old M2 competition's aggressive but engaging DCT and the new M2 smooth auto. Okay, that's interesting. I guess we're gonna have to wait on the reviews to see how people really like this transmission over the other one. Huh. At least that's what we found in the case with the new M4, which also evolved to use a torque converter. Okay. Oh, also the other thing nice about this M2 is that it does come equipped with, I think it's an electronic LSD versus a mechanical one. So, and here are the headlight differences. Again, not the biggest thing in the world of a difference. You can tell that they are kind of going to this design from the LCI models. I mean, that is present here. So they were just lazy and they just flipped it. If you really look at it, see like that, just turn it down. And there we go. So it's just kind of lazy. Okay, performance goes 0 to 60. Let's see, 4.1 seconds. Okay, so you're not losing that much in performance. It's minimal. Like these are nice numbers, but it's nothing life-changing, I would say. It comes with 10-stage M traction control systems that will provide even more options. We'll take the M2 out for the track days. Okay, I really don't know who's writing this. And I don't take my car to the track. Okay? But when I just drive around here on a tough roundabout, which I'm pretty sure is nothing compared to a track, I don't have my traction control on. So why is this I don't know who's writing this, but this person is saying when you're on the track, you're going to want the traction. Do you really have traction control on when you're at the track? I don't know. While it won't necessarily make the new M2 better to drive, the wider track widths will now match the M4. Now match the M4. And unlike before, the new M2 now has staggered tire sizes, with those at the back measuring 20 inches, an inch large. Oh, okay. I was like, it was staggered in width, but I guess, yes. And then, so I guess the fronts are 19 and the rears are 20, and I'm guessing they're also wider as well. It's up to you. On the track, it probably matters. If you're competing, it probably matters. On a daily driven car, I prefer a square setup. You're never going to be really in a situation where it matters to have staggered versus squared wheels, unless you really care about the aesthetics. And if you do, you get set off with spacers. What you will really benefit from is being able to rotate your tires evenly and get the most for your money out of your tires, versus the car goes straighter a little bit better. And considering that this is a driving enthusiast car, you're going to be paying attention most of the time anyways, and you're going to have your hand on the wheel. So yeah. Here's the headlight design. It has that downward scooping thing, which again, as a whole, is really more of an Audi thing, and not the biggest fan of it. Oh, I'm going to miss these. For some reason, I don't know, like this style of grille, I really liked. I'm not a fan of this one. I'm trying to think, even if you replace this entire thing, like you get rid of this center section like this kind of did. I don't know. It looks like a junk car. It looks almost like it got wrecked, and it's got just pieces of bumper hanging out if you were to do that. Not a fan. I don't know if this is the radiator or the oil cooler here, but one of the reasons why BMW had the oil cooler downward and then a guard is so that the debris doesn't smack it all the time. So if this is an upward radiator or an oil cooler and it's that open, it's going to be very much subject to that same type of damage. So I don't know why they would have switched the design. This is why those metal skid plates are so popular with the S55. It's because it's to protect the oil cooler. And it was designed that way so it doesn't take on the oncoming debris while still getting the benefits of an air channel. Interior, we already talked about this from analog to digital. This is more of a preference thing. This is really nitpicky. Let's see here. Let's go back. This is extremely nitpicky. I wish the infotainment stuff was on the left versus on the right. Because if I'm shifting gears with my right hand and I want to say like increase or decrease the volume of whatever I'm listening to, I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to, you know, trigger things like I want to call somebody or I want to change the song on the track or whatever. I want to be able to do that with my other hand versus having the cruise control and all of those dinky things on the left. It's like, again, they're not listening to their customer base. It used to be the other way around. In the E90s, the infotainment stuff was on the left and the drive control was on the right. Because guess what? If you have cruise control on, that means you're not shifting. That means both of your hands are probably on the wheel, which means you're going to do this, right? Versus this hand will always be here because this hand is shifting. So what are you not always going to use all the time? It's going to be the cruise control. You're only going to use cruise control when you're not shifting. Versus infotainment, you'll always use it. Again, nitpicky. And, so yeah, we talked about the design. These are the seats. And here's what I said earlier, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. The G87 M2 comes at $62,000. Hey guy, so it's not too far from your $40,000. Just over $3,000 more than the F87 M2 competition. That seems like a reasonable increase for a car with more power and superior technology, not to mention a vastly improved interior. Can these improvements atone for a more muddled design though? They just might. Okay, they think so. Improving upon the outgoing M2 must have been... Okay, gosh, guys, stop kissing up to them. But crucially, it didn't break any cardinal sins with the new one. It chose to retain straight 6 power. Yes, that was always going to be a thing. A manual rear-wheel drive at the time when downsizing and electrification have taken over. I really don't know who's writing this, but they seem like they're not a BMW enthusiast, or they just don't know much about BMW. Kind of like the design engineers. If any of these 3 elements were lost, we'd have a much harder time accepting the G87. The new coupe is still a thoroughly unique proposition relative to its Audi and Mercedes-Benz competitors, even if it has put on more weight than we'd like. No longer as easy on the eyes, the new M2 promises to be just as captivating as the old one where it matters most, from the driver's seat. You're going to notice that longer wheelbase. For me personally, one of the reasons why I picked the 2 Series is because it's shorter wheelbase. It's easier to parallel park with the 2 Series than the 3 and the 4s. Like, I don't want a longer wheelbase car. Like, I feel like you have the Z4 or Supra at this point, whatever you want to call it, is your 2-seater car. You have the M2 for like emergency passengers. The 3s and the 4s can hold, the 3s better, but 3s and the 4s can hold passengers. 5 is a touring car. You want to relax. Don't make the 2 Series the new 3 and the 4 Series. You already have those cars. You literally have like this, like a longer, wider 2 Series is the 4 Series. Why are you like, nobody would buy the 2 Series anymore if you just make it the same thing as the M4 but heavier with less stuff, less power. It's like you're forcing people to buy the M4. I don't know. That's enough of me ranting though. Soul Slinger, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. Hope all of your projects are going well smoothly. Russian Bear. Okay, let me switch over to my other one so it's easier to read these. How can it weigh more than a similarly equipped M3? How is that even possible when it's the same platform with smaller design? Does it come with bricks in the trunk? I mean, they've probably done like some weird things to make it weigh more. Like maybe, I know some people were saying that it doesn't come equipped with a carbon roof, but that picture looked like a carbon roof. So maybe I'm pretty sure like the dampers and stuff are probably going to be the same. If I'm really trying to think of like weight, what could possibly weigh it down is probably like the roof. If they're extending the wheelbase and it's close in length and width, oh, it's the roof. It's the roof and it's the wheels. It's those two alone is probably 70, 80 pounds of difference right there. I'm trying to think of where else. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at where we could have gained some weight here. I'm pretty sure it has something to do with the exhaust. The interior is going to be very close in weight. All the things. And the interior is going to be close in weight. The differential, I think, might be the same. Engine's the same. So yeah, I'm going to say most of the weight, like the reason why it's so close in weight to those other cars is because of the wheels and because of the roof. As of right now, I don't think you can spec it with a carbon roof. It's the wheels that are carrying most of the weight. I would say like the roof is probably like 10 to 20 pounds on a car of this length. And then the wheels, it's easily 30 to 40 pounds. I'm going to lean on 40 because remember they said that it was staggered. So this is a 20-inch wheel. So this is a 20-inch wheel. So like even if say like the M4 has the same wheel setup, it's the fact that these are a 20-inch wheel. These are 19 and they're wider. So yeah, most of the weight is in the wheels. Eduardo, the F87 competition looks much better. It is one of my favorite looking BMWs. I dislike almost every part of the G87. Taillights, headlights, front and rear bumpers. The side profile looks okay. Oh, side profile. You know what? I don't like the door handles. That's one of the things that I absolutely loved when BMW moved away from the E36 to the E46 is the door handles. I don't like those latchy type door handles. I like the ones where you just pull on it. Again, it's give or take type of thing. You know, it's really nitpicky, but it's like you already had this. It has been working for a very long time, and yet I don't know. Or it doesn't make sense to have traction control at the track if you know your car, unless you drive on the Nürburgring. Is that how you say it right? Nürburgring. With all its tricky undulations. Yeah, I mean, maybe if you're just learning it, maybe if, you know, like if you're in like Las Vegas and you're at that, like you can rent an exotic car or a fancy car and drive it around the track. And maybe like the first couple of laps, like you're not used to it. So you just want that safety in mind because it's not your car type of thing, I guess. But if you're buying this for yourself, I mean, yeah, I don't know who wrote this article, but they don't seem to be a real enthusiast or somebody who really understands BMW all that well. Let's see. We have a few more people in here. What do you guys think? Let me know in the chat. Should we go through the next article or should we save it for next time? Let me see how long it is. I'll skim it first to see if we get more of the same type of thing from the other one. Oh, okay, well, at the very least, let's take a look at some of the pictures. So this one does, I think it does a better comparison of the two. So we have the, let me get rid of these, see if that makes, nope. Okay, that helps out quite a bit. Soul Slinger chiming in here. It seems like we have a consensus here that most of us do prefer that older design. Yeah, so when we're really looking at it, like I said, is I think they really, Eduardo, was that you who said it stole the RS2 look? That Porsche look bumper? Yeah. The hood looks fairly similar. I do like the lines up top. I do like the lines of the M4, I think look the best out of all the F chassis cars. It has, like if you get a GTS hood and you have the lines on the roof and it extends down to that M4 trunk, that is really perfect top view lines guiding from front to back. Let's see, this is where the comparison is going to happen. Okay, yeah. So more about the cosmetics of it. It just looks so good compared to this thing. Down the side. Side profile. I'll give it to the G87 on this one, on side profile. Definitely looks more sleek, but I think that has to do with the length of it. Yeah, I'll give it to this one. I'll give it this one. But again, I think it really has more to do on the length. More than anything. From the back. I'm not the biggest fan of this little like hump right here. If they're going to do this kind of like ducktail, it's like either do it all or don't do it at all. You know, like this is kind of like a half effort of like the CLS ducktail. Here's, okay, now it really makes sense to me. I wasn't sure why I didn't like the rear end. Like when you look at it by itself, like it looks fine. What bothers me about the rear end is it really, look at the car. It's really smooth over here, not too attention grabbing, very, I would say, undercover. And then you get to the back and it's like, boom. Okay, like let's, all the edges, all the lines, all the little things, versus the F chassis. It's a smooth line. Yes, it has a little bit more of a defining line over here, but then it comes and it rounds off. It falls off very, very nicely. It's kind of like if you're talking to someone and you're like just having an easy conversation, and eventually they start to get quieter and quieter and quieter. Right? That's what it's like. It's like it just tails off. Versus this is like if you're talking to somebody and you're talking, and then all of a sudden, boom, they start yelling. That's what this is. Right? Interior, I'll admit, it's better. I still prefer it to be separate, and I would like an option to have a analog looking gauge. The seats, like I said, I could do without this little piece right here. I like how they minimalize the trims. You don't really need those there. This is a very simple design. So I do like this. Not a fan of the thing on the door cards. And I do like the start button here. I guess they've lowered everything. If you really look at this, let's see. So maybe you do have a better viewing angle of the road because you don't have this little hump here. Everything is kind of like brought down. So that could be nice. That can improve the drivability of it all. And then they give their opinion. Yeah. So I would say outside, definitely giving it up to the F chassis. Interior, G chassis. Even the side profile, I'll give to the G chassis. I'm just not a fan of what BMW is doing as far as like detuning the engine when it's already shown that it works. Yeah, just not the happiest about that. But it is what it is. I don't know. I guess they don't really care what we think. There's no way BMW is watching this and like, oh, this is what we should do. There's no way. So all of us can at least like-mindedly think this way and talk amongst ourselves here. And we'll wrap up the chat for today. Soul Slinger, new girls look like a schnoz. Yeah. Not the biggest fan of it, but hey. BMW should have angel eyes. New M2, isn't it? Fugly. Yeah. So this little design of mine over here, I don't know. I'm going to keep it. This is really a signature BMW thing. A lot of companies were like stealing this design from BMW. I think some aftermarket manufacturers did things for like Challengers that mimic this. That's your signature thing. As much as the centered, V-shaped configuration of the exhaust is like a Lexus thing. Those square setups is potentially a Porsche thing, or at least for that model. I think BMW really needs to reevaluate their heritage, what makes them BMW, what makes them unique, as well as what the customer base really wants. Replacing the critical plastic components would be nice. Just saying. Jump. Screen by Tesla. Yeah. Let's look it up. Okay, so we have that big old screen right there. Let's shrink this down. Ah, close enough. Close enough. Oh boy. So you take this and you just turn it horizontal. Oh boy. Oh, we got carbon fiber on here now. Fancy. All right. Hey, it is what it is. To each their own, I suppose. But with that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up for today. If you guys want to keep talking about this for next week or something else, just go ahead and let me know. Again, the best way to reach out to me is going to be either on Instagram preferably, as well as TikTok at RoomTuber. I hope all of you are doing safe, doing well. Thanks for hanging out. And Vijam, thank you so much. I will keep it. I actually had a friend, a good friend of mine who came up with this design. So I am pretty sentimental towards it. I will keep this design. Plus it's essentially my car, or reflects our car, I should say. And I hope you're doing well over there in Canada. I'm not sure what the weather like is over there, but I hope you are doing well as well as everybody else. Anything else? Okay, here we go. Soul Slinger agreed. Thank you, both of you, for that. I'll mention it to my friend that you guys appreciate his design so much. Thank you again, everybody, for hanging out. I hope all of you do well, and I'll see all of you next week.